Hala, hala. Whoop, 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 boom.
I was with Andy Regetz, walking down a steep track from his home in Wengen to see his sheep.
So how many are here? There's about 50 of them. They're going to eat your microphone.
Andy was president of the local ski club for many years. That's why I was there to see him.
And so where does the Lauberhorn start? Look up through the gap in the forest. Can you see it in the middle?
Yeah.
In the horizon here. And then the steep bit is the Honeckschuss, and then it comes to Seilersboden. That's the part you see from here. And then I show you where the start is.
The Lauberhorn ski races, one of the most famous and challenging winter sports on the planet.
The Lauberhorn is a World Cup race. That's the highest race category in alpine skiing. It is the longest alpine World Cup downhill. It goes just over 4,000, 4,200, 4,300 meters. I don't know exact, but it's over 4,000. And the winning time usually is about 2.5 minutes or a bit over.
2.5 minutes. Sounds like nothing, right? But it turns out a lot can happen in 2.5 minutes.
The Lauberhorn is special. The mountain is special.
It has steep bits, it has high speeds, it has jumps.
It's the longest and probably most difficult races you have in the ski circus.
Full pressure, everything goes in your thighs, in your back, in your stomach, and you have to hold that.
The athletes, they tell us they can hear the fans cheering.
When you're a ski racer, it's one of the most important days of the year.
You can almost touch them because it's so close to the racers.
Unfolding in a corner of Switzerland which defies description.
I knew that it's beautiful, but it is such a beautiful place that I have no words actually.
Stunning, takes your breath away, just amazing.
It's a place where resilience,
the body is pushed to the limit on this circuit,
is matched by spectacle.
The Swiss Air Force is doing a show with 6 fighter jets.
And the joy of celebration.
It's a big party. There is music, dance. The whole town is a madhouse.
That's something special and you can't describe it. You have to feel the experience here on site.
Lauberhorn is a cult, it's legendary.
There are a lot of emotions. It's a crazy event.
It's long, it's fast, and it's difficult to be fast.
You're listening to a series exploring the 9 Swiss top events. Hosted by me, Jack Boswell, and presented by Switzerland Tourism and Swiss Top Events. This is Views from the Top. Episode 6, The Lauberhorn Races. The Lauberhorn ski races take place above the town of Wengen in the Bernese Oberland in south-central Switzerland, amongst the towering mountains. There's the downhill and the slalom races. In this episode, we're going to focus on the downhill. And to set the scene, I stopped in to see Claudia Hediger, Deputy Managing Director of the races.
For me, it's always a privilege when you can work in something you have the passion for it. It was always a goal to work someday for the ski races, and I was the lucky one. I got this job.
What are your memories of watching it as a child?
We were cheering for all the Swiss athletes, and I remember the cheese dresses of the Swiss athletes. And
Wait, what is a cheese dress?
The design was like a Swiss cheese.
So you have these pieces of Swiss cheese coming down a mountain?
Yeah.
I checked. It was a way of promoting the cheese and fondue industry. Unfortunately, it's changed now.
Since 95 years, we are organizing the International Lauberhorn races, and 95 years of ski racing. Every year, there are legends born here in Wengen because we are home of legends. You have to be clear in your mind and in your body. You have to be prepared for the Lauberhorn races because it takes some time to handle this physical aspect. A really big challenge for the athletes to handle it.
I wanted to understand just how big a challenge it is for the athletes. So in this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. And that's how I found myself on the Jungfrau train service, climbing even higher into the mountains. I wanted to unpack the 2.5 minutes it takes to race the downhill. Every twist, every turn, every jump, from start to finish. And to do that, I'd need 2 helpers. Helper number 1.
So my name is Reto Fuchs. So I grew up in Wengen.
Reto's part of the organising committee. He'd be walking me the length of the downhill ski run in summer so I could see it up close, firsthand. And then there's my second helper.
My name is Bruno Kernen. I used to be ski racing for quite many years.
Bruno's being modest. He won the Lauberhorn in 2003 and also has an Olympic medal. Even after he retired from racing, he became a cameraman who films the POV of the ski run, leaving him with no hands to keep balance. I mean, were you more scared as a cameraman than as a racer?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Bruno would be talking me through what it feels like from a skier's perspective to race down the Lauberhorn, giving me a blow-by-blow.
I mean, the fastest part on the downhill is over 160k. I mean, I get a huge fine if I ever would drive 160 on the highway.
I spoke with Reto and Bruno separately, and we're going to move between them in this episode. We start off with Reto at the very top of the downhill.
So we are here now up at the start. Behind us is the Wixie chairlift. That's where the athletes are coming with on the top. And then here you feel starting, to feel the tension, and then you have all the fans meeting the athletes. The athletes are concentrated. The fans want to have an inter-exchange with them. And so it's always a special atmosphere here. And yeah.
And that special atmosphere, Bruno has a love-hate relationship with it.
Mentally going to the edge, knowing, okay, I'm going to risk my health because I want to have the tightest line. So that builds up a lot of stress, a lot of pressure while you are in the start house. Also knowing my performance actually can change my life because life is never the same when you win the Lauberhorn race. And one day when you stop racing, you realize you don't miss the whole traveling, you don't miss the competing, but you miss exactly that feeling in the start house, feeling all that pressure, all that adrenaline kick. This is what I'm actually missing after all these years, and I'm still missing it.
So you're in the start house, waiting for the signal, and when it comes, you launch out towards the first of the jumps, the Russi jump.
Before the Russi jump, there is a sharp turn to the right. This first turn, a lot of people are already a bit behind, and that's because of that first turn. So this is, as a racer, a very important place on the downhill.
And the next jump is the Hundtrump. But before you get to that, there's a long, straight stretch known as the Traverse, where you build up some serious speed.
And there you're the first time, I would say, around 130 kilometers an hour.
Okay, and what's going through your mind at that point?
First of all, you don't think what happened, because you're always looking forward as a racer. You never look back. Not physically, but definitely also not mentally. So you're in the traverse, the wind is blowing, and you have a game plan, and you know exactly there are 2 gates, where in between these 2 gates you want to pass, and then it's like an automatism, and you get out of the position, put your skis on the edge, and then you try to do that whole turn before the Hundtrump in one.
So we are on top of the Hundtrump now. That's a very crucial part of the race. It's a very unique part. There are several unique parts in the Lauberhorn ski race, which probably a new run would not be allowed to have. And that's one of these. That's about, 20-25 meters, perhaps 30 meters between the cliff and the net. And they have to jump out here. And if they don't get it right, they land either in the net or, which we don't want to hope, in the cliff. So I've never seen that. But that people touch the net, we have already seen.
But I just want to get a little closer to see how steep this jump is. I mean, wait, so they're not coming over the edge of this?
Sure, they come over this.
But that's like 100 meters down.
Yeah, no, it's more, even more till the end there. And it's a very difficult jump. And now the most important turns are coming, and you have to be extremely focused, some kind of bravery, but I'm not sure if it's bravery. Perhaps it's something beyond bravery, that you have to have no fear at all and be completely focused on the next step you're going to do, since now every hundredth of a second counts.
I mean, with all due respect to the athletes, it might be insanity.
That's a good question. Is it insanity? Is it bravery? Or is it something beyond? I can't answer that. I really think these guys are so confident. You see, they train so hard. They, since 5 or 6 years of age, they just ski. And somehow these guys can exclude the thought of falling down or being injured and really completely focused on what they want to do. They have a clear game plan how they want to do that run. And with that, they somehow can cancel out all other noises or whatever there is in their brains. It's incredible, yeah.
The idea of cancelling out the noise in your brain is one which resonates with Bruno.
The year before I won the Lauberhorn race, one thing which I changed was I started working together with a sport psychologist. And I remember as it was yesterday, the very first thing he told me was, thinking makes you slow. I've heard that many times, but I never met any person which was able to explain me how not to think, because if I don't want to think, I think not to think, so I think again. And then he said, well, it's not possible not to think, so we have to be able to canalize our thoughts. And for me, that was actually the secret of winning the Lauberhorn.
Do you feel fear in the moment?
I did some breathing exercise like 20 minutes before the start. Breathe in for 3 seconds, hold the breath for 3 seconds, breathe out for 3 seconds, then the same with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds and all the way back. And at one point you feel like you're neutralized with that exercise. At that moment I was able to leave every disturbing thought and just focusing what happened on the race.
Back on the mountainside with Reto, we had reached the next jump.
So here we are now at the edge of the Minchkante. You have to turn on the right, so some of the athletes already turn in the air so that they can go in this right turn, which ends then in the Alpweg, as they call it, which is the start of the Brückli Ass, which is a little bridge you have to pass. And it's so difficult that once, I think it was in the 90s somewhere, 3 Canadians at the time of the Canadian Canucks fell down into the net, in the security net, short before the train track there. That's why the corner, the turn to the right here is called Canadian Corner. So we are now in this passage, Minchkante Canadian Corner. So what is the nice part of this area is that there is on the other side there is a hill, and there the audience can be and look the athlete in this very difficult part, and it's well designed, well set up. So the DJ, for example, brings then like an Italian pop song. If there is an Italian athlete which will be the next jumping over the Hundschopf, they will play in a Swiss pop song if there is coming a Swiss, and this all makes it to really a special place with lots of atmosphere. You can eat and drink, and it's really fantastic, and you can also come with the whole family, so it's a party. You have to love parties, that's for sure.
We continue walking down the run until we reach 2 turns in quick succession.
And we are now at the beginning of this famous ass turn, which you have to take to be able to pass a little river which goes over a little bridge. And it's a super narrow thing, which is certainly not allowed in a modern downhill race, so that would never be accepted. But since we have now 95 years, in 2030 it will be our 100th anniversary, so we are really a classic and still can maintain or keep this very special part, Brückli S it's called, so now it's Kernen S.
If that sounds familiar, it's because the turn was named after the very same Bruno Kernen that you've been hearing. Here he is again.
A lot of people are always asking me how comes that this place has your name. And then I always say, well, the most important thing is having a terrible crash. It was in 97. I don't waste extra meters by doing an extra turn or a pre-turn. In training it worked well, but in the race it was much more bumpy, it was much more icy. I just did a turn of 180 degrees and then I went backwards into the fence and it was spitting me out for some meters and I couldn't breathe anymore. And then 3 weeks after, I became world champion in downhill. And 2003, I was the first guy from the Bernese Oberland since the World Cup started winning the Lauberhorn race. And so the organization committee decided that name is changed from Brückli S to Kernen S. I'm very thankful. Not everyone likes it, but it's definitely a big honor. Yeah.
Between the crashes at Canadian Corner and the Kernen S, I was beginning to see a pattern emerging in how the Lauberhorn picks its names. And from the Kernen S, skiers shoot down a short, steep slope and through a narrow tunnel which runs under the Jungfrau Railway into a long, clear stretch.
Then after that part, it's getting flat. And it's the first time when you can breathe a bit. And your legs starts hurting or burning. The good news at that point is, okay, you already have half of it.
We're halfway through now.
Yeah.
I want to jump in and point out that Bruno's idea of flat is not a normal person's idea of flat, as Reto made clear to me.
So we are here now in the gliding part of the race. That's the easy part, so you can a bit think a little bit, not too much, but what happened before. But nevertheless, if you stand here, that's the easy part now. Would you call that flat, what we see here?
No, I would not in any way.
It's incredible. It's still, for us, normal, average people, it's still very steep. And if you have to go that all down, head between your legs, hand in front, and just go as fast as you can, it gets extremely fast. So what they call a relaxing gliding passage, where you have to be as smooth as possible. For a normal one, still super challenging.
And yet, things are about to get even faster. The Hanexus, where speeds can top 160 kilometers an hour. That's 100 miles an hour.
And the Hanexus, fastest passage in the whole World Cup. I know there is like a non-written agreement in between all the organization committees. They don't want to have a competition who has the fastest downhill, but the Hanexus definitely is the fastest bit in the whole circus. I think if you are a real downhiller, if you have the speed blood circulating in you, then the faster it goes, the more you try to be more aerodynamic, to optimize your position, just to go even faster. Someone which doesn't have the speed blood in him maybe gets automatically producing a bit more wind braking, but everyone which starts at the Lauberhorn believes strongly he is a downhiller.
So you have the speed blood?
I definitely would say so, yeah. I'm less on technique, more on speed, yes.
So after this very steep part, you get to flat ground, completely flat, or more or less completely flat, called Seilersboden. You do then quite a turn. And then there is the second last jump called Silberhorn Sprung.
If you've ever watched the broadcasts of the downhill, this is the bit you'll recognize.
So you see the athlete jump and have this super nice Lauberhorn peak in the background, and that's a fantastic TV shot you have there. They jump over that, they go a bit further down to the Austrian hole, as it's called, Österreicher Loch.
And you'll never guess how the Austrian hole got its name.
Again, the reason is that there was once a race, I can't remember the year, but it's quite some years ago, where several Austrians all felt at the same spot, and that's why it's called now the Österreicher Loch, Austrian Hole. And then the famous and last really challenging part, the Zielass, so the finish ass. Super steep, super icy, narrow turns where you then really throw yourselves over the finish jump and then into the finish. Some very dramatic stories around that Zielass, which is, we talk about hundreds, which one loses and the other one gains. That's the nice part, so the sportive part, and there is unfortunately also one or two sad stories, which is not nice, which we don't want to see in that sport.
Reto is referring to Gernot Reinstadler, a promising young skier who was killed after a crash in 1991.
And that was, as you can imagine, still, that's the lowest point of this 95 years history was that, for sure. That's still in all of our heads. And if we at the Lauberhorn talk about security, we always get that in mind and take that super serious, yeah. But we have done a lot for the security, also have taken out some of the difficulty. And there you also see how much the people are at the edge. They are completely, the legs are blue, and you really have to decide also for yourself how much you want to still risk and how much you want to still go for the win. And that's also part of that sport. It's, we do, I think, all we can as an organizer to prevent injuries, but 100% safety is not possible for that sport.
And with the end in sight, Bruno explains what goes through your mind.
When I'm full of confidence, then I really just go straight and don't waste any extra meters. I really go take the straightest line, which brings also up a lot of risk, because the first turn, the straighter you go, then you have to push much harder on the second turn, on the right turn. But again, when you feel comfortable all the way from the start till there, you feel it, then that's something which comes up naturally with the racing instinct. And racing is a lot about instinct, actually.
Back on the mountain, it wasn't possible for Reto and I to walk the last stretch of the run, so we hopped on a ski lift which delivered us down to the finish line. And standing there, you can't help but dwell on how demanding those 4.5 kilometers are. Hard to believe that all happens in the space of 2.5 minutes, everything you described.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's as I said, it's 106 kilometers an hour in average. They go down that steep hill. If you haven't seen it, it's difficult to imagine. Even though we too try to explain it, you have to see it, or at least hike it down or ski it down to once to really understand what they deliver here, these guys.
Once you pass the Zielass, you cross the finish line. Something which every racer does is checking the time. That's the hard thing about our job. We immediately know if we did a good job or a bad job. And it's not about, yeah, I managed to come down without any crash. You want to be fast, you want to be successful, because that's what you train for 8 months, 7 months throughout the whole year.
When you pass the finish line, can you finally process the feeling? Are you feeling euphoric, or are you just overwhelmed by the physical toll on your body?
I just remember the year when I won. After my world champion title, I had some tough years. I was always in the first starting group in the top 15 of the world, but when you're world champion, that's not good enough. But when I crossed the finish line, I was just feeling in peace with myself. I made a kid's dream come true that day. how many years is it? 21 years ago. It was a beautiful time, a wonderful time. I really don't want to miss that experience, that day. But today it's nothing more or less than just a nice souvenir.
You've been listening to Views from the Top, a Switzerland Tourism and Swiss Top Events collaboration with the support of our partners Swiss International Airlines and Swiss Deluxe Hotels. It's been a true anti-classic production presented by me, Jack Boswell. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review and subscribe. Thanks for listening.